We are continuing a reading session about the Hita, or the means to realize our spiritual goal, written by Dr. K.C.Vardachari. It's page number 324. The continued experience, the simple gist of what we have read so far. Initially, he spoke about the necessity of morality, how morality is very important foundation for spirituality. And then in one of the means, he talks about the importance of training our mind to rest on the subtlety of reality. So he's asking us to think of the extremely subtle nature of reality and think of the subtle divine light, which is all pervasive. He's asking us to think that the subtle divine light is pervading your whole body, and then it is going out of the body, going into all the organic inert matter, and then it is pervading every cell of your body. And he says, by thinking like that, so many impurities get cleared, and this will help us a lot in developing, acquiring subtleness of our own mind. Unless our mind becomes subtle, we cannot have unity with the subtle God himself. So development of the subtlety of the mind is very important, which can only be possible by thinking about the subtle nature of the object, and also the all-pervasiveness. And then the master transmits the subtlest consciousness, and who is linked to the absolute reality. He'll transmit that subtlest consciousness, which starts operating in your heart, actually. That's how, so far, we have the gist of last Sunday's meeting. Now we'll go ahead with the further this thing. The continued experience of peace within, lightness, and a peculiar means by which the knots of distress that encompass an individual seem to get dissolved or loosened, are the most important results of the superconscious transmission of the master or of his representative. It is well known that the chain of gurus is more or less continuous in all religious institutions. But it is also well known that the powers of transmission which some of these gurus possess in some measure are not exercised by their successors in office. Thus, we find that successors, as a rule, endeavor to copy the ritual or forms adopted by their predecessors or gurus. And we find that there is more emphasis on the letter and form rather than the act of transmission itself. This snapping of continuity determines the fall in standards of spirituality in sects and religious institutions, not to speak of all institutions in general. In Sri Ramchandra's Raj Yoga, the line of preceptors is continuous, and the transmission by each and every preceptor is of the ultimate consciousness alone. There is hardly any difference in the quality of the transmission and consciousness, though there may be difference in each individual case of transmission as to the matter of operations in respect of cleaning and uncovering the sheaths that had formed on the central core of being. This makes for the real continuous creation of divine men or divinized men by and through the transmission of the ultimate divine being. It may also be observed that one becomes more aware of being rather than knowing. One becomes filled with peace and fullness. There is thus the dawn of reality in oneself. So here we have to notice why Sir was so strict with all of us. He was especially very, very critical to the point of, drive home the point about the necessity for discipline and purity of mind and owning the conditions, because the whole system stands on the work of the trainer, actually, and the trainer's mind has to be disciplined, and then he has to possess those conditions, then only he can transmit those conditions. So he was very, very particular. which was actually got diluted during the time of Babuji himself. Everybody thought that he's just a medium and then he will sit and the Babuji's consciousness will enter their mind and will operate. That's not true. ISRC says that the trainer himself is in a condition, he owns the condition and he transmits using his own willpower. Of course, he's connected with the master and then the grace of the master backs his willpower. That is the important difference because of which we had to come out to the SRCM organization. This has to be understood by all of us. Thus, the unique feature of this new system lies in divine transmission, giving of the breath of the being, pranahuti, of the divine to the individual seeker, which after this first contact continues to invigorate the individual and uplifts him to the ultimate reality. It is called Ujjivana, the real living or living in and for and by reality as such. One passes beyond all dualities and achieves realization of the reality. It is possible to think that transmission is the activity of God himself within the individual, by which alone one is enabled to have the experience of God. It is possible also that this experience starts as a mere feeling of vibrations at the heart and later on in all parts of the body. It is possible also to feel godly presence throughout. The vision of God, which is sought after by many saints and lovers of God, is of God in his manifested forms in the world, such as avatars. It is possible that the accounts of the forms of God or gods are got under high spiritual conditions. It varies from culture to culture or sect to sect. The ultimate or para form of God is something that he alone can reveal, or is one into which one almost sinks or loses oneself, even as a river loses itself in the ocean, or a drop of water in the lake. But the physical body or even the psychic body does feel the flow of divine energy, which is soundless, ajapa. The experience of ajapa pranava, omkara, naturally comes about when the transmission is made. At the beginning, some of the abhyasis had observed colors such as blue, red, or yellow, or just lightning like white or gray clouds and so on. This is, of course, color experience usually referred to certain centers of transit or ascent. They are all astral colors, not of the retinal or physical stuff. Similarly, the sounds of the pranava could be observed and heard at certain points in the body, or they are felt as if there is tingling. The experience of purification of the system is also had. One experiences a feeling as if there is smoke going out of the body. Some abhyasis have related that they feel the transmission to be cool, and some have felt it to be hot or warm. These are possible because the transmitter is taking the abhyasi through several points, each evoking a different sensation, even as there are physical hot spots, cold spots, and so on. It has been reported to me in certain cases that the abhyasi was feeling nectar in his throat. All these are astral experiences, spontaneously coming up when the transmission takes place. As the goal is ultimate reality, and as abhyasi is advised not to frame up or evoke any form of that conditional reality in the light of his humanistic needs or desires, all experiences of the several gods and seers and saints are considered to be much below the goal sought after, even though all these are not deemed to be illusions or hallucinations or even relative truths. The having of visions and experiences by itself does not constitute a nearer approach to the divine being. All that it denotes is that one is being opened up in different parts for the divine experience of God's presence. As one advances, one's sensitivity is increased profoundly, bringing about a quiet and a peace that is unearthly or divine. it's okay. I mean, any questions so far? Or any comments?
No.
Then we'll go ahead. The need for certain kinds of self-torture or penance or some such sufferings is felt by several saints, if not by ordinary people, who would have an impression of the extraordinary humiliations and privations necessary for God experience. Thus, he has been sought in the middle of prisons or caves or uninhabited places, including fearsome places like the cremation grounds. Sainthood was thought to be a result of martyrdom, or at least of near martyrdom. This belief has been very common all over the world. It is this willingness to go to the desert and all that has been considered to be the hallmark of sainthood. The Bhagavata states that those whom God loves or desires to give himself to, from them all riches, etc., will be taken away. Such a denudement is necessary for enjoying loneliness with God. Thus, exclusive devotion to God includes separation from all else. God thus exacts this supreme sacrifice of all else. Indeed, events transpire in the life of the saint which bring about this supreme or splendid isolation from all except God, who becomes more and more the only person occupying his vision and experience. But the question is whether all this is not based on the concept of unnaturalness, that there's a gulf between nature and God, and man's choice is based on the dilemma of either or. Martyrdom as a step in courage, as a decision in favor of God, is quite a necessity, as Sri Krishna has shown in the Gita, and all religions had held up the ideal of martyrdom, to die for God and higher values, which is one definition of love. So any comments about this? What are the views of people listening? Is martyrdom necessary, or is penance necessary? Or is our system a natural system, which Babuji talks? We are not diversing ourselves from nature. We try to copy nature and try to be in tune with the nature. Anyway, it's for people to think. Anyway, let us see what he's. We will probably address the question also. Evolution perhaps demands this act of decision to die rather than sail with the world and its lower or restricted views. So much so, penance or tapas was inculcated for purification of the entire physical body and the soul. The world in which we live is itself a great area of suffering, both in respect of oneself and in respect of others around. We have a world soaked in suffering of all kinds, physical, vital, and mental. A world in which ups and downs are the rule is a world of transient happiness and pleasure. All seem to be gripped by the principle of vanity and pain. Sri Ramchandra affirms that the world of samsara itself can be shown to be the training ground for higher life. To run away from it or depart from it into solitude and silence as such may be one way, but certainly not the only way. That path is a path of austerity and penance and outer renunciation, which finally has to bring about inner renunciation and nothingness. One does not develop a void within by running to a void. If one has to achieve the void within so that God may be installed in it, one must look after the within alone. Undoubtedly, the others may be said to be of help in achieving renunciation and non-possession. We know that those who have sought the outer silence or solitude had tried sooner or later to return to the civilization with all its original foibles, ostensibly to cure it of them. The samsara itself is a training ground for renunciation. Here too, love plays the part of renunciation of possession and develops the attitude of sharing. Disinterestedness can develop in the concrete setting of the family and community life more naturally and without casting any aspersion of uncleanliness and sin on family or community life. The real difficulty till now had been that few indeed of the saints thought about the divine force or grace as capable of being brought to the sinner without his having to be taken out of his social life and environment, or in one sense, abstracted from it. The spiritual modification made by the transmission of the divine force makes it possible for the human individual, male or female, to grow in the context of the environment which begins to undergo change, pari parsu with the changes in the consciousness of the individual. The consciousness of sin, so essential to the call to be saved, is overcome if it subsists by the growing dependence and assurance of liberation and salvation and forgiveness. The naturalness of the process, so spontaneous and unaffected, consists in the simplicity of the happening. Thus, God is seen not to insist on any radical or spectacular departures from those who had surrendered to him wholly, for verily these have been prescribed for all those who had developed their ego and had been made to be aware of its existence as the root of all sin. It is true that ego is the effective principle of individualism, and its abolition is most difficult provided we start with it. Supposing one goes beyond to the divine and does not put the ego either against or for the divine as such, or place one against the other in all forms of relationship, the ego slips out of the picture and occupies its natural place in the scheme of divine being. Okay, this is in short about it, and we have time. We'll go into the next topic, which is also connected with yoga, difficulties in yoga. Before that, any takeaways from this article? Anybody wants to summarize, or so that we can recollect and then carry on further?
The earlier question that you were asking, right? He has answered here, right?
He has answered here, yeah.
In a renunciation and nothing.
You see, Babuji is very clear that his system is simple, natural, and can be practiced easily. So he is telling that in a very normal way, think that divine is present in the heart, and sincerely try to rest your attention on the divine light in the heart, and that's all. Sit for 1 hour in a natural way. Don't try to force yourself at all. And if you become aware that your mind has drifted away and then moved into other directions, gently bring it back and allow it to rest. Like that, you keep on training, and then evening you do a cleaning process whereby you think that all the impurities are getting burnt and going out in the form of smoke, and in its place the grace from Master is filling up your heart. That is simple thing. Anybody can do it. And night he's saying that you say the words, "Oh Master, thou art the real goal of human life." And then when you say the Master is all-pervasive Master who is intimately connected with every cell of our body and everywhere he's present. And but he's invisible, and then for normal persons, they're not conscious of God. They're conscious of the world, external matter, people and their thoughts, and then everything. We are conscious of the world, but we are not conscious of the presence of God. So he says, when you sincerely try to dwell on the thought that is the real goal of mine, real goal of human life, and then you're yet but slaves of wishes. And if you are slaves of wishes, you have no chance of getting the vision which makes you feel the presence of God. And then you're sincerely imploring and begging in a supplicant mood, asking his help to take us back to that state of divinity. And then he's asking us to dwell on those thoughts of prayer and till you get into sleep. So the whole night gets converted into spiritual practice. And just by doing these practices, he says very naturally, you will feel a kind of a continuous peace within yourself. So you don't have to struggle, and after some practice, you will realize that you are harmonious within yourself and with nature totally. So there is no need for any martyrdom or renouncing your family, wife and children, go to mountains and oceans, or nothing extraordinary needs to be done. It's a simple practice. And he is very clear in that the truth itself, the reality itself is so plain and simple that it itself is a wheel actually. So actually speaking, many of us have a epiphany, or we suddenly become conscious of the continuous presence of God within us, and we have to just be quiet to be in touch with that. That is so plain, we just miss it. It's just like the fish in the water trying to understand where is the water, looking for water, but we are totally immersed in God, but we miss it because of the mind is not pure actually. So by simple practices which Babuji is telling, we can purify our mind and then start feeling the natural presence of God inside us and all around us. So there's no heroism necessary, because it's not possible for all of us to leave our families and then leave our roles in society and go to jungles and do tapas and all that, like Prahlada did and all that. It's not possible for all of us.
Mahalakshmi sister, you were asking something earlier.
Sir, the sadhana which we do is equivalent to the penance they call. Both can be said to be one and the same.
No, you see when you are made a sankalpa, or you have an intention to connect with God, and you're training your mind to stay at one place on the thought of God, that process is called the tapas only. That is tapas only. And Babuji says that this is the highest form of penance actually. The training your mind to stay at one place is actually tapas only. And as per Babuji, that is the highest form of tapas. Meditation itself is tapas. Tapas is austerity. Austerity in the sense that your mind is now attracted by so many diverse multi-sensory organs, or even thoughts are also sensations actually. You are attracted by so many things in the world. Now you are, instead of getting attracted by so many beautiful things in the world, including thoughts and fantasies, you are now getting attracted to simple divine presence in your heart. That's all. So this process of mind which is distracted and attracted by beautiful things, you are withdrawing it and getting attracted to the mother of all the beauty, or all the goodness, or all the purity. So this process itself is tapas.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll go to the next, which is a smaller article. Let's just read it. It's called Difficulties in Yoga. Though most writers on yoga speak about its efficacies, not enough has been written on the difficulties and tribulations met with by the sadhakas. There are undoubtedly some lucky souls who have been able to devote themselves to one kind of yoga and never had the misfortune of having to grapple with problems of belief. Nothing succeeds like success. A large number of men in the modern world are not so lucky. All of us are born into traditions built up into a kind of system, steel frame or otherwise equally strong, and find that yoga itself is an attempt to get out of the social systems and frames, or to use the expressive language of the Vedanta sheets, koshas, or wealths. All religions are such koshas, treasuries, and bind man to them firmly. In this world where freedom is one thing that matters in social and political life, it becomes doubly necessary to enlarge the freedom eternal and to enlarge the goal of all religions and spiritual endeavor. Therefore, in the disciplines of religions, social life seems to be perplexing and self-defeating. Paradoxically, though, everyone insists on conformity or obedience to the dictates of systems of freedom. Like, for example, even in our people, we have seen that once you meditate and you have tasted the transmission of a preceptor who is connected to Babuji, you know the peace which descends into you, and that is real freedom, which none of the temple priests, professional priests who have got no practical experience can give you. But still we are so much bound by the social cultures that we go, still go to temples, perform rituals and all that, which shows the grip of social reality on our minds. And we are afraid that you will be ostracized by society if you do not perform those rituals and rites in which you are born, actually. I mean, this is prevalent in almost all religions, in Hindus, Muslims, and Jews. Very, very superstitious, very ritualistic, very dogmatic, and they can't think of breaking those, breaking away from them, because they will be their livelihood will be affected if they try to break free from those shackles of social cultures and customs. Further, there are indeed quite a number of competitive systems, some of them promising the freedom which the traditional religion or cult seems to curtail or does not deliver. Thus, in the context of the converting religions, the conscience of the man is no longer at peace with his religious heritage or tradition form. Like many of these Abrahamic religions, probably is referring to that. Either he is forced to question the foundations of his traditions. There, like for example, the Abrahamic faiths have problem like you have to agree that the world is created in 6 days. And if you question that, then that is blasphemy. Earlier, it was punishable by death. Fact. So even now, in Islam, it is being taught in various madrasas that the earth is flat. If you question that, then you know you'll be punished. In those small children are punished if they question the teaching. Actually, either he is forced to question the foundations of his tradition, their whys and wherefores, and seek to verify in his own life and experience their validity or claims, or he is made to consider and discuss or have a dialogue with the other claimants to his heart and mind. Therefore, is the world that has begun shrinking in size and limits. The challenges are much more than the mere exchange of information or comparison of coherencies or degrees of acceptabilities. A scientific decision demands the attainment of goals which man has been fixing as ultimate and necessary to his own perfection and realization or fulfillment. However much then we are free in our educational life in respect of accessibility of contemporary and ancient material from all over the world, the conflicts within the mind of man tethered to his past are greatly disturbing. This is one of the main difficulties in the modern man's search for his soul, and we are finding it difficult to gauge the depths of this reaction. The polytheistic worship was a difficult enough experience to those whose goal was the one reality. They had either to deny the many by accepting the one, or deny the one by accepting the many. The dilemma posed by the Advaita had brought but one kind of difficulty while solving other, namely the possibility of one-pointed devotion. The dilemma posed by Dvaita has brought out another kind of difficulty as to how one could simultaneously worship or adore many gods or manifold existence. The difficulty is similar to that which is found in polygamous existence. There is, of course, one way of resolving this difficulty, and that is to consider that all gods are indeed the one God in his manyness. And similarly, the one God it is who has become the many for the sake of his devotees who are many, who are indeed many. All this is very difficult for persons who have been shattered in their traditional faiths. though the vasanas or tendencies have been mutilated but not completely severed. Served. I think it should be severed. Thus, lovers of Shiva find it difficult to shift over to the love of Vishnu and would like to interpret all divine forces in terms of Shiva. Similarly is the case with the lovers of Vishnu, so too with Shakti and Brahma. We have a subtle attempt at bringing about or building up hierarchies with our pet idol or God as the highest. Some have sought to go behind these attempts, which are so well elaborated in different kinds of Puranas, which is traditional lore, by recourse to connotative meanings of the names of gods and established to their own inner satisfaction that all names and therefore all works and activities and births or incarnations of gods are the one God, refer to the one ultimate being, spoken of as the reality, Sat. Sat eva somya idam agra asit, ekam Sat. But all these rationalizations or even highly sophisticated experiences do not go far. Men have a strange but compelling pullback to their sectarianisms. Even as in social life, men revert back to their communalisms or casteisms to explain away their failures or their sense of humiliation. This atavism, social or religious, is no less part and parcel of the inner life of man, as it is in the biological survival or conflict complexes. This reversion is one of the most significant facts in racial and communal suspicions that today make religious life and political coexistence impossible. Further, institutions, by developing loyalties, tie up the individual ultimately to intolerance and misunderstandings. So far, it's okay. Any questions or any clarifications? I mean, it's describing the present state which we can all relate to, actually.
Yes.
It's quite contemporary, actually, what we are seeing. Though we have all been striving for the abolition of these subtle, though thick barriers in all our walks of life, we do not appear to have gone at all towards the goal of a barrierless social or religious existence. All remain, notwithstanding human desires. I have found that this atavism or regression to cult and sect, caste and creed, race and place and language plays a very difficult role in yoga as in everything else. So he is now coming to the crux of the title of this subject, difficulties in yoga. So I found that this atavism or regression to cult and sect, caste and creed, race and place and language plays a very difficult role in yoga as in everything else. A universal consciousness, qua universal, cannot recognize these difficulties as necessary for evolution and harmony. Further, whatever may be the truth of each one of these and their values divested of the 5 fundamentals of Yama, namely adherence to truth, non-injury, non-thieving, non-robbery, and chastity, or devotedness to the pursuit of the ultimate known as Brahman. They are just hindrances and positive obstructions and sin on the cosmic consciousness and higher than cosmic consciousness. Therefore, those abhyasis who are soaked in loyalty to these traditional or environmental inbuilt complexes cannot but find themselves in difficulties. The double loyalty is a great hindrance. Therefore, gurus insist on the single devotion and request that during the period, at least of the sadhana, they may give a trial to the efficacy of the non-traditional or single tradition, as against the multiple traditional conformity that makes a mockery of our devotional life. Therefore, Sri Ramchandra's Rajayoga, like the earliest Vedic invocation, says that our loyalty or goal must be for the ultimate reality. Nothing less should be aimed at. So to overcome the difficulties, this is the point. This is the 3rd commandment. Fix up your goal, which should be complete oneness with God. Rest not till the goal is achieved. So we should have a clear intention in our mind that our goal should be ultimate reality. Further, it has been our experience that those who seek spiritual importance or recognition and influence usually import these difficulties into their lives. which is extremely common, which I've seen in so many preceptors. It's a very powerful hindrance actually. Further, it has been our experience that those who seek spiritual importance or recognition and influence usually import these difficulties into their lives. Thus, one Mr. S, who wished to appear an advanced soul, when not recognized so by the master, turned against him and left the sadhana. Another Mr. G brought in his own concepts of greatness and could not accept a master who was regionally or by caste different from himself and wished to set up himself as master. Another Mr. K sought to attain the ultimate, but was torn between the traditional methods of worship of icons and the spiritual method of worship of the Supreme in the heart, and ended up in a serious conflict with one of those many individual self-styled saviors of Dharma through lectures and orations and other occult practices intended to enhance worldly power and so on. Still another Mr. T, who deemed himself to be directly in touch with the highest powers and claimed visions and so on, found that these were not given to him by the present practice of thoughtless and egoless condition. He also had ambition to become a preceptor, and when denied that, turned away from the sadhana. It is also known that many seek entrance into new societies to meet with more opportunities for their ego. Humility is the essence of spiritual evolution, and any ambition should be recognized as a hindrance to the ultimate realization. Because these are known by seers to be obstacles and perversions of the real aspiration. This is the first difficulty. I think I'll read it again. This is important. Humility is the essence of spiritual evolution, and any ambition should be recognized as a hindrance to the ultimate realization, because these are known by seers to be obstacles and perversions of the real aspiration. This is the first difficulty. The basic fault of most seekers seems to be this subtle obstruction, proceeding from oneself, entrenching itself on the traditional and other conventions and complexes of worships and customs. The second source of difficulties is the lack of siddhis, attainments, such as are exhibited by miracles. These siddhis are said by the Yoga Sutras themselves to be hindrances in the ultimate realization. The usual yoga practices sometimes lead to the awareness of one's miraculous powers, and this in its train brings into play more and more of egoism, concealed under the name of service to humanity and amelioration of misery of man. To be able to give man his life, his progeny, the preservation of his wealth or its acquisition and health and so on is undoubtedly a great service. So men go to saintly men or spiritual men to gain these, as in the opinion of the ordinary man, it is one of the basic acquisitions of a spiritual man to have the miraculous power to give these necessities and needs of man. The sadhaka therefore may find these miraculous powers are not exhibited by masters of Sri Ramchandra's Rajoga. And even those who are said to have evolved or gone up the ladder of spiritual ascent high enough do not exhibit them. The yoga of Kundalini school almost affirms that for one who has awakened his Kundalini, the power of omniscience and omnipotence is available. Perhaps it would be claimed that these purely godly attributes are inevitable acquisitions. So many seek this attainment not for the sake of realization of the ultimate, but for the sake of enjoying sovereign power. In this sense, Kundalini becomes exhausted and takes its revenge on the individual and forces him to realize that it is itself a hindrance to the ultimate. It is the greatest force of Maya, illusion, and one should not be tempted to play the role of the individual egoist at cosmic and supracosmic levels. So true is this that the Puranas and Vedas hold that only one person, the Supreme Purusha alone, is the master of Maya. The rest are bound by it, creatures deluded by it. The supreme nature is something that is beyond all Maya or its rings. It is beyond all egoisms and elements of individuation. Therefore, Sri Ramchandra's Rajoga holds that realization comes when one passes beyond the central region itself which is beyond Parabrahmanda, Brahmanda, and Pinda Pradesha. That is the reason why even gods who are masters of the Brahmanda are not said to be free individuals who realize the ultimate. Though they are very much higher than the ordinary man, yet wallowing in the mire of the Anda and Pinda. Therefore, also it is said that unless even the subtlest kind of egoism is surrendered, no further progress is possible. And perhaps the fall from God's state is necessary for ascent. This may be true, or else it is just possible also that one could, with the help of the Divine Master, go higher by submitting himself to the higher absolute. This was perhaps the meaning of the parable of the lifting of Govardhanagiri, where Indra himself submitted to the power of Sri Krishna, the avatar. Again, the gods humbled themselves before they had the vision and access to the absolute. The power seeker is unfortunately incapable of going beyond the levels of Brahmanda or cosmic consciousness, even if he is such as does not slip back into the lower level of the world. The Abhyasi seeks the ultimate peace and reality, and as such, the claims on his miraculous powers for the sake of humanity cannot be satisfied or answered. No one should attempt to answer the demand for miracles. Sri Ramchandra states that these powers are there to be used when required, and when they are not used, they are not required by the ultimate. Though miracles are said to qualify a person for sainthood according to some religions, yet miracles by themselves mean nothing at all, except as obstacles to spiritual ascent for the individual exercising them. To yield to popular demand in this aspect is to deviate from the path of realization. Impatient though man is, yet it is good for him to learn to be patient and resigned to the natural development that has been initiated by the transmission of the Supreme Consciousness. One thing seems to be axiomatic, or human consciousness is very much limited and spatially and temporally circumscribed consciousness. Further, what is revealed by it are related to matters of immediate concern to life and property, and is almost helpless beyond them. The cosmic consciousness is indeed different. Beyond that are the levels of consciousness which might well be called by different names, for the description seems to be inversions, or rather originals of our inverted consciousness. So much so, to speak of its powers and possibilities is beyond our consciousness itself. As one proceeds on the path, one transcends the regions of light and heaviness and attains regions of lightness and subtle original intuitions and insights, where the light of our comprehension fades away, leaves us naked in the presence of the Supreme in all its purity. The abhorrence of isolation, or kaivalya, is one of the characteristics of the modern age. Man is conceived as inalienably a social being, and society is the very condition of human or of all existence. This social conception has influenced man's traditional values so much that the fact that he is an individual spirit and that he has trans-social function and destiny are forgotten. The yoga has been accused of aiming at kaivalya, or isolation, or freedom from all bonds, including the sangha or community. If ego is one barrier, sangha is the other. Both could be bonds for the man who seeks something more valuable than either, for example, God. The attainment of the purest state of spirituality is called kaivalya, and not what it had later on to be considered to be a kind of isolationism. It is similar to ekanta bhava, or ekanti bhava of soul and complete experience of reality as it is in itself, without any kind of limitation or subjectivity. This experience, which goes beyond the levels of subjectivity, knowledge, and grants direct experience of reality as such, is surely the most desirable. But logical thought is incapable of comprehending such an experience. It is real, but if reality is only defined as that which can be defined in logical terms of subject, object, and predicate, then such an experience transcends the mental dialectic. These are certain basic difficulties in the path of yoga, much more than what usually are considered to be obstacles of human nature, weaknesses of man. In fact, it is one of the most important features of spiritual life or search for yoga that it arises from conditions of deepest despair and depression, of weakness of heart, hridaya daurbalyam, and helplessness, akinchanata. Surrender to the highest spirit or God, Prapatti, is about the most important first step towards self-recovery and upliftment, Ujjivana. It is because it is about the most important that yoga itself insists that one must devote himself to the service or attainment of God or Ishvara, so that one may become like him. Worshipping the eternally free Lord of all nature, one grows to that state of being free and Lord of all nature, or live according to that supreme divine being and his nature. To be in conformity with that supreme being or nature is to attain freedom, which is easily available. And when one attains his condition or him, one attains all that could be attained through freedom and naturalness. So that's all. We'll stop today's reading session. So he didn't talk about the normal hindrances which Patanjali was talking, like, he talks of Vyadi, that means disease, Dhyana, that is mental disinclination to work. Then he talks about samshaya, doubt whether this method is good, whether really God exists or not, whether really God exists in my heart or not, whether my mind is capable of realizing God or not, whether the Guru is capable of. All this is called samshaya, doubt. Then fourth is pramada. Pramada is heedlessness. Heedlessness, you're casual about it. Then avirati. Avirati is attraction to sensual pleasures. I mean, which is a common drive of human life itself. It runs after to seek pleasure and happiness. So, not happiness, basically pleasure. So attracting to sensual pleasures is avirati. This is a hindrance actually. And then Bhranti Darshana, that means there is an illusion that you have gained all the knowledge, even if you are in first knot or second knot, and then you get a condition that you are part of nature, you're intended by nature, then you feel that you realized you have known everything. That is called Bhranti Darshana. That means Bhranti is an illusion in your mind. Then Bhranti Darshana, Alamba Aloki Tattva, it is there. Not owning of the condition is another hindrance. And then Anavasti Tattva, that means instability of the condition you have gained. So these are called the 9 hindrances. And one of the methods suggested in the Yoga Sutras is you can overcome all these hindrances by developing Ekatattva Abhyasa. That means thinking about only one thing and one alone, which is what we do in our meditation. We think about the divine light in the heart, and whatever work we are doing, we dedicate all our work to the master, and then we depend on him totally, and then we feel the dependence on him, and we dedicate all our work. So we attempt the finite for the infinite by bringing in divinity at each and every moment of our existence. In that way, we are thinking of Ekatattva Abhyasa. We think of only one thing, which is the God or the master. So then these hindrances will not work. But the topic he has raised here is not those hindrances, but something much deeper issues he has raised here.
Any other questions anyone wants to add?
Then we'll meet next time then.